Hi, and welcome to the second session of Advanced Python, offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. Let's start the second session with a little bit of review of where we left off. And the last thing I was talking about was functions. So let's do a quick review about functions because they're incredibly important in Python. So the format of function is you have to use the keyword def, def, space, and then function name, and then parenthesis, and then parameter. So parameter 1, comma, parameter 2, blah, blah, blah. So you can go on and list as many parameters as you want. And then you close it out with a parenthesis. Get rid of the dots. So this function has two parameters, and parameters are variable names. All right, they can be whatever you want to call them, but you want to name them to be appropriate for what values they're going to hold. So, and then you end the definition of the function with a colon. Hit enter, and in idle, you will automatically be indented inside the function. So we want the function to do something. So say we do a print parenthesis. This is my function. Quotes and parentheses. Okay, so that's what this function is going to do when it's called. And then down below, later in your program, you're going to want to call this function and use it. So the way to call the function is you just do the function name, parentheses, oops, back, parentheses, and then you're going to pass arguments. So in this example, we're going to need two arguments because when we defined our function, we have two parameters in the definition. So argument 1, comma, argument 2, parenthesis, and that's how you call your function. So you have to call it by name, and you have to pass it the number of arguments that your function requires when it was defined. Now, the way to, you don't necessarily have to have any parameters when you define your function. And the way to do that is just have open and close parentheses. So have it empty inside the parentheses. So in case you didn't know, on the left is my idle session, which is my Python text editor that I'm using to develop my programs. And on the right is the Python shell, which is the command line of Python. And that will show you any errors that come up. It'll ask for user input. So let me show you an example of a function. So if I had def, so get rid of this call, and get rid of this. I'll get rid of the whole thing. So I want to define a function. So def, and we'll call it my function. Parenthesis, and I'm going to pass into this function. Actually, instead of calling it my function, why don't we call it something that makes a little more sense? So this is name. We'll call it a name function. All right. And the parameters I'm going to pass are first name or F name, F name, comma, and I'm also going to pass L name, which is last name. Now, these parameters names are they're simply variable names, and you can call them whatever you want. I don't have to use F name. I should call it. I should write out the whole thing, first name. But in this case, I'm just going to call it F name, and the other parameter I'll call L name. And then you always end your function when you're defining it with a colon. Hit enter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to print. What this function will do is print, parenthesis, and I'm going to print out the first name, comma, and then I'll print out a space, comma, and then the L name, and parenthesis. Okay, so that's my function. When I call it, what it's going to do is going to print first name that I pass into it, followed by a space, and then the last name that I pass into it. So down below, I'm going to call my function. So you call it by name. Name function is the name of my function, parenthesis. And what I want to do is I want to pass a first name. So my first argument is going to be the first name. So I'll pass Ed. And then my second argument is going to be the last name. So Ed Jones. And that's it. So I will do a run of this program. Run module. Click OK. And this is a new program, so I'm going to have to save it. Okay. So I will save it in my advanced Python folder. Advanced Python. All right, I'll call it function review .py. Always end your Python programs with a .py. That's the Python extension. I hit save, and I got one error. And so the pop-up window says syntax error, unindent does not match any outer indentation level. Right, so when I click OK, the cursor is going to go to where my problem is. All right, so my problem is on this line. And if you look, I start by calling the name of the function, which is name function, and it's indented, and it shouldn't be. Indentation in Python is crucial. All right, so certain times where you have to have indentation, and certain times where you don't. And this was one of the times where I'm not allowed to have indentation. So when you do a call, it has to be all the way over to the left, no indentation. So I will do, now I'll do a run module. Okay, it's already been saved. And if you look over to the right in the Python shell, it prints Ed Jones, Ed spaces Jones. All right. So the one more thing I want to talk about with functions is I want to mention and just do a quick review on the return statement, the return command, which is inside a function. So inside my name function, what I'll do is I'll do this print, but also I'll do a return. So the keyword is return space, and say I want to return 3 times. Well, why don't I show you another example? All right, real quick. All right, so I'll define a new function. So def, I'll call my function num. Yeah, I'll call it num. parenthesis, and I'm just going to have a variable x, parenthesis, and a colon, right? And what I'm going to do inside this function, that's to be indented, is I'm going to do a return. And I'll do 3 times, which is asterisk, and 3 times x, whatever the value of x is going to be. So when I call my function, I call it by name, num, parenthesis, and then all I'm going to do is pass a value that will go up into the parameter x. So the argument will be a value, and I'll say I'll do 5. Let's see. All right, so I can run this program. And this one, and that. What I forgot to do is I forgot to do a call, but I forgot to do a print. And you surround the print with a call of the num function with the argument of 5. So now it will print out whatever is returned. And what's going to be returned, I'm sending 5 as the argument up to x, which is the parameter, right? So x will get a value of 5. And then I'm going to return whatever 3 times x is. So 3 times 5, it'll return 15, and then it'll come back to where I called it, and I will print whatever is returned. So when I run this over in Python shell, you'll see 15 displayed. So run module, okay, and 15 is displayed, just like I said. So that wraps up our review for functions. And once you understand them, how they work, how to define them, how to pass parameters, how to do returns, how to call them and pass arguments. Once you understand the flow of how functions work, once the light bulb goes off, it's amazing how much you can use them. So I want to move on to some other data structures. And so I'll do a file save as, and let me call these, call this a list. Save. And real quick, I'm going to go over in the first class, Python fundamentals. We covered one data structure that was is called a list. All right, so a list is let's see, I'll do a fruits list. All right, so fruits. That's the name of my list, equals, and then square brackets, and I'll put in apple, quotes, separated by comma, and then I'll do a banana, and then I'll do grapes, and then square brackets, and that's a list. Okay, so I've created a list named fruits. I've given it 3 items, apple, banana, and grapes, and lists are ordered, so they do use an index. And the index number, starting with the first item, apple, the index number will be not 1, like you would think, but 0. Okay, so the index, the position of apple is in position 0, position of banana would be in position 1, and position of grapes would be in position 2. Okay, so that is a list. Now, the next one I want to go over, I'll just say that. So our next one that we'll work with, why don't we work with tuples? So in Python, so I'll call this one tuple.py, All right, so in Python, tuples are a little bit different than lists. Their syntax is a little different. And so a tuple, spelled T-U-P-L-E, okay, is, now, if you remember how to use a comment in Python, it's just a hashtag right before the line, and it'll turn the whole line red. All right, so I'll tell you what a tuple is. Tuple, keep doing that. Okay. Tuple is a collection which is ordered and unchangeable. Okay. So by saying it's ordered, tuples, just like lists, have index numbers, right? They have positions. So you can reference them by their index number. Now they're unchangeable, meaning like I can, with a list, I can change an item in a list. With a tuple, you can't. Once you create the tuple and add the items to your tuple, those items should not be changed. All right. So, one more thing about a tuple. With a list, you surrounded the items with square brackets. With a tuple, we're going to surround the items with parentheses. Okay. All right. So let me show you an example. Okay. So say you have I'm going to call this fruits. So I'll call this fruit. Just like we did with the list. So you name your tuple, fruits in this case, equal sign, space, and then it's just parenthesis and apple, comma, banana, comma, cherry, and close it out with a close parenthesis. All right. So that's my fruits tuple. Now, let's the way you would print out all the items in a tuple is just print parentheses, and you just name. You give the name of your tuple. All right. So when I run this, it will create the tuple named fruits. It'll add the items apple, banana, and cherry, and it will print all the items in the tuple, which will be, it will print out apple, banana, and cherry. So I'll do run module. If you look over on the right, Python shell displays apple, banana, and cherry. All right. Now, since we're dealing with a tuple, and tuple is ordered, the way to access your items, so say I wanted to print out the item banana. All right. So first you have to name your tuple, which this tuple is called fruits. And then you use square brackets. And then banana, remember, banana is in position 1. If apple is position 0, and banana is going to be position 1. So in between the square brackets, you put the position that you want, one in this case. And then we would close out the parenthesis for the print command. And this should print out the word banana. Run the module. And if I look at my Python shell, it shows banana. On the bottom of my Python shell, which is on the right-hand side of my screen, you have banana. So that's how you access your tuple. Now remember, tuples are unchangeable, so it's not like you can add a new item to this tuple. And it's not like I should remove an item, add an item. But I can reference it because tuples are ordered. So that's about it for tuples. I'll do a file save, or save as. And the next one we're going to move on to, the next data structure, is going to be sets. So we covered lists, and now we covered tuples. And the next one will be sets.py. Okay, so we got to change our comments. All right, so set. Or a set. Now I'll get rid of this stuff. And set. What a set is a collection which is unordered and unindexed. This is unordered and unindexed. And now, unlike lists, which have their items surrounded by square brackets, and tuples, which have their items surrounded by parentheses, let's see, a set is surrounded by curly brackets. So I've got curly bracket, I've got curly bracket, curly. Okay. So let's do an example of a set. And we're going to call this set fruits. Big surprise. Okay. So fruits equals. So data structures, the format is very similar. The one thing that's different in the format is what the items are surrounded by. And then also for each data structure, whether or not they're unordered, if they're unchangeable, or if they're unindexed. Those are the qualities for each type of data structure that differ. So fruits, and then we're surrounding the items with curly brackets. Okay. And I've got apple, banana, and cherry. And close it out with a curly bracket. And I have just created a set. All right. Now, sets are unindexed, which means they cannot be referenced by an index number, by a position. So, one way to access the items in a set would be to use a for loop. So for s in, and then I want to loop around the set that we created. In this case, the set's name is fruits. Followed by colon, hit enter, then inside the for loop, we're going to do a print. All right, so we'll print x. So when I run this, it's going to, one at a time, it's going to print out the. So I will run it, the module, and this is sets.py. And if you look at the bottom of my Python shell on the right-hand side, I've got cherry, then apple, then banana. So that's one way to access the items inside a set. Since sets are unindexed, you can use the for loop to loop around the items and print them out. Another thing that you can use with a set, let me comment out this for loop. All right, you can check to see if an item is present. And the way to do this is you can do print, parenthesis, and then say I want to see if cherry is present. So I'll do the who's cherry in, and then I name the name of my set in fruits. And then close parenthesis. So when I run this, it says yes, true. Cherry does exist inside the fruits set. But what if I named another fruit? So I do this again, and I will comment it out. All right, so what if I'm looking for grapes, which is not inside the set named fruits? It should give me a Boolean false. So I run module, and the Python shell at the bottom says false. All right, so using the item name that you want to check for inside your set, and then the keyword in, and then the name of your set, you can print out whether it does exist in your set or not, and the computer will return true, either true or false. What else we got for sets? Okay, so sets are changeable, like lists, and unlike tuples. So what else can we do with this wonderful set? Well, we can use the add method. So the way to use methods in lists or sets or tuples, what you do is you name your set in this case first. So the name of our set is fruits, so it's fruits dot, and then we're going to use the add method. So dot add parenthesis, and then we're going to add a fruit. So why don't we add orange? All right, so that will add orange to our set. And remember, sets are unindexed, so we can't tell we will not know what position orange actually goes into. So what I'll do is I will print fruits. I'll print out my set, and we'll see where orange was added to our set. All right, so when I do a print, I've got cherry first now instead of apple, then orange, and then banana. And every time you run it, orange would probably be added in a different location. Because remember, sets are not indexed. Now there's another method that I want to cover real quick, which is for sets, you can use an update. So now my set has orange in it. So what if I wanted to do multiple fruits? When you use the add method for sets, you're only adding one item at a time. When you use the update, you can add multiple items at a time. So if I take my fruit set name, dot, update is the name of the method, parenthesis, and then I'm going to add several fruits. So let's see, what's not in there now? Grapes. Grapes. Well, what else do we have? Banana. How about mango? All right, so now I'm adding 2 items. And after I do my update, I'm gonna print all the items inside the fruit set. All right, so run module, and I'm updating by adding grapes and mango. So sorry, I made a little mistake. So the format is the name of your set, fruits, dot, and then the method name update, parenthesis, and then all the items that you're adding have to be enclosed with square brackets. So that will make it print out correctly. And that's how you do an update for a set. Okay. And if you look at the bottom of my Python shell screen on the right side, I've got mango, cherry, banana, apple, grapes. And so grapes and mango have been added to my list. So now I'll do a file save as. So now we've covered lists, we've covered tuples, we've covered sets. And the final data structure I want to go over real fast is called dictionary. So I will save this as dictionary.py, hit enter, and I'll get rid of everything. Dictionary, and we're dealing with the dictionary. And what else? So what's different about dictionaries? Well, dictionaries use key value pairs. So they use a key, and then when you call the key, it'll give you a value. And the key value pairs are surrounded by curly brackets. They're separated by a colon. And let's see, a dictionary is a collection of unordered, changeable, indexed items. All right. And items are surrounded by the key value pairs, I'll say. Key value pairs are surrounded by curly brackets, the same as sets. All right, let's do an example. Okay, so I'm going to do I'll do a little bit. Let's see. Should we use fruits? A dictionary of fruit. No. We're going to use a char. So I'm going to call my dictionary chars equals. We'll do a curly bracket, and I'll hit enter. It indents automatically. And then I'm going to call this, let's see, my key is going to be a brand, right? Equals, or colon. And now I need a value, right? And value will be a Toyota, right? And then you have a comma, because I'm going to have more items in my dictionary. Next one will be model. My next key, colon, and this model will be, say, Camry, comma, and the final key value pair will be age, and this will be 2010. Oops. Now age is a number, so don't surround it with double quotes. Hit enter, and then you have to close all those key value pairs with a closing curly bracket. And you can see in my idle screen, once I add that closing curly bracket, it turns the whole thing gray, and that means that everything is looking good. All right, so let's print out my dictionary. So print, and I call it chars, and I'll do run module. And if you look, it prints out the key, brand, the value Toyota, the key model, value of Camry, and the key age with the value of 2010. All right. So remember, these are unordered, changeable, indexed items. So if I wanted to get the value of the model key, let's see. If I want to get the value of the model key, and the way to do that is coming out this print. So all I want to do is get the value of the model in my dictionary. So the way to do it is I'll print out cars is the name of my dictionary, and you just have to do square brackets and name the key. And the key in this case is model. And square brackets and end parenthesis. This throws out my print statement. So when I run this now, it should print out the value of the key model, which will be Camry. And to run my module, enter. And you can see I've got Camry at the bottom. Now, you can also do this with the get method. I'll show you how to do that. So if I do a print, I want to do the same thing. I want to get the value of the key from the key named model. And what you do is just do print parentheses, and you name your dictionary, which is cars, dot, call the get method, And then in parentheses, you enter your key that you want the value of, parentheses, parentheses, and that should display the value Camry, just like before, and it does. You look at the very bottom of my Python shell. Now, for dictionaries, one more thing. What if I wanted to change the value of a dictionary of an item in the dictionary? So the value we're going to change is we're going to change we're going to use the key age, and we're going to change the value from 2010 to 2019. So we name our dictionary, which is cars. So cars, and the way to do it is with square brackets. So cars, and square brackets, double quote, age, double quote, square brackets, and we're going to do equals, and now we're going to make it 2019, and that will replace the value of 2010 that we had originally set up in our dictionary. And what I'll do is then I'll do a print to make sure that the change took place. And I'll do cars, and I'll use the get method. That's get. And I'll call the key, which is age. And that should display the value of age, which should be 2019 now instead of 2010. So run the module. And if you look at the bottom of my Python shell session, off to the right, it says 2019. So that's it for data structures. So we covered lists, we reviewed lists, and we learned about sets, or tuples, sets, and dictionaries. And those are the 4 types of data structures that you'll be using in Python. I want to move on to a super important topic now, and it is classes and objects. All right. Classes and objects. And I want you to think of classes as just a blueprint for an object, right? So just like when you were building a house, you would have a blueprint of the house you want to build. And it's got all the specifications of that house. So I'll do a file, save as. Online. And I would call it classes. .py. All right, so I've got a brand new program now. I'll get rid of everything here. And let me show you how to create a class. When you create a class, you want to use the keyword class. And you notice in my idle session, once I type in class, it turns orange because it's a Python keyword. So if I had class, and I will name it something simple, my class, right? Followed by a colon, which is usually the case in Python. Almost everything is followed by a colon. So I'm creating a class, and all I'm going to do is have x equals 5, or x equals 10. All right, that's all my class does. That's the only part of the blueprint that it does. So my class is pretty weak. But now I want to create an object off that class. And the way to create an object is you call it, I'll call it my object. My object 1, I'll call it. And then I'm going to do an equal sign, then I'm going to attach it to a class, right? So the only class I have in my program is my class. And then parentheses, parentheses, right? Nothing's in pass. Not in this case. This is the most simple class I could have. All right, so I name my object called my object 1 equals, and then I'm attaching it to a class, name my class. And I've got empty parameters or empty arguments. And I just have a parentheses, parentheses, so it's empty. There's nothing being passed. Now let's take a look at printing my object. So my object 1 dot x. Because remember, up in the my class, x is defined. And once I create an object that attaches to a class, it has access to anything that that class offers, right? So that class is offering the variable of x with a value of 10. So I'm going to print whatever the value of x is through my object called my object 1. I'll do run on module. And off to the right, the Python shell, it prints out the number 10. All right, so that's the most basic type of class. But to use classes and objects in Python, you really want to go more in depth. So let's see. So all classes have a function called, and the function name is a little bit funny. Well, first of all, functions are the same as methods. The only difference is a function is outside of a class, whereas a method is inside a class. But they operate the same exact way. Remember, creating a function, you had to use the keyword def, space, function name, parenthesis, and then have parameters or no parameters, end parenthesis, and then a colon. That's how you create that's how you define a function, and it's the same exact way with defining a method. When you define a function inside a class, they're called methods. So there's a initialization function that automatically gets produced whenever a class is created. All right. So this init method, I'm going to call it a method. I'm going to use the appropriate word. So the init method, if you look at the class that I created called my class, the init method behind the scenes was automatically created. It just doesn't do anything. There's no attributes that are associated with it. So why don't we take a look at this init method? All right. Okay. So I'm going to just comment out my simple class. And then let's do something else. All right. Okay, so let's do another class. So you have to use the keyword class. I'm going to call this person. All right. And followed by a colon. Hit enter. And inside my class, I'm gonna define the init method because I want to pass them some variables. Name and age are the variables I want to pass. So once again, a method is the same as a function. It's just a method is inside a class. So to define the init method, it's def space, and now the init method name is underscore init underscore. And then I would have a parenthesis. And then it's followed by self, which I will get to in a minute. And then I want to pass the parameters name and age. And it's followed by a colon, right? Functions, when you create them, are followed by a colon. And methods are the same as functions. So hit enter, and it indents inside the method init. So now I say self.name equals name. Hit enter, and then self.age equals age. Hit enter. Okay, so my whole class, name person, has a init method in it that has the parameters name and age. So when I go to create an object, all right, so I'll call this person one. All right, so the name of my object is going to be person one. Hit enter equals, and now I have to attach it to my class, right? And I want to attach it to the class person, right? So person is a blueprint for any person objects I'm going to create. So my person blueprint has a name attribute and an age attribute. And that's all it has. That's all it's offering as a class. So person one equals the name of the class, which is person, parenthesis, and now I want to pass the name argument, which this case would be Mike, and then I want to pass an age. So Mike's a nice 25 years old. Okay, so that's how you create an object, attach it to a class, and in this case, the class is looking for a couple of parameters. It's looking for a name, and it's looking for a age. So I can print out these things now. So if I do a print, I'm going to call my object. The name of my object is person one, and dot, and then name is the name of the attribute. All right. So I will do run module, and it should print out the name Mike. And that's what it does. And make sure you look at the bottom of the right-hand side of my screen. In the Python shell, at the very bottom is what the output is. And it outputted Mike. Now, what if I want to also print out the age attribute? So I call my object name, which is person one dot age, the attribute I want. So that should print out 25 now. So it's print out Mike, and then it's print out 25. And that's what it does. If you look to the right on the bottom, it prints out Mike and then 25. Now, why don't we do a nicer way to print? The print, and I'll do the string. Hi, my name is space, quotes, comma, right? Comma is used for concatenation. Hi, my name is, and then I want to call the person one object dot name right? And then I'll do another sentence. Oops. Dot name, comma. And then how about double quotes? I am, space, double quotes, comma. I'll make the idle section bigger so you can see it all. And then I'm going to call the object person1 dot age. And then I'll close out my print statement. So this should print out, hi, comma, my name is Mike. I am 25. So I do run the module. And that's what it prints out at the very bottom of my Python shell. I got hi, comma, my name is Mike. I am 25. So real quick, getting back to, I promised you I would tell you about self, the first parameter of any init method that you use in your class. Now, self is it's a parameter, and it's a reference to the current instance of the class, and it's used to access variables that belong to that class. So in this example, the variables that belong to the class are name and age. Now, the name self, you don't have to use the word self. You can call it whatever you want. In some programming languages like Java, JavaScript, I know a lot of times we use this. So this dot, and you can use the word this if you wanted to, or you can use the word I should call it mammoth, right? It just has to be the first parameter of the init method, all right? So if I change it from self to mammoth, then I've got to do that down here. So mammoth dot name, right? So mammoth is the current class instance dot name, and then I'm just making it equal to name, and then mammoth dot age equals age. So if I run this, it'll still print out, hi, my name is Mike, I am 25. It doesn't matter if you use the word self or not. And see, over in the Python shell, after I ran it, it printed out the same exact thing. Hi, my name is Mike, I'm 25. So you just have to keep in mind for the init method, the first parameter has to be a variable name that you use throughout the class to reference the instance of that class, and so it doesn't have to be self, but that's what Python kind of uses as their standard. So you might as well use it, consistently. So that's just a kind of a quick overview of classes and objects, and we'll go into more detail about classes and objects next session, and we'll talk about scope and inheritance, and you'll find out that everything in Python, if you can understand this concept, then the light bulb's really going to be going off. But everything in Python is a class and an object. Everything. So, and I'll show you what I mean by that next session, our third session of Advanced Python. So I hope you got a lot out of tonight's session, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And please go out to the Google Classroom and check out the exercises and reference material that I post out there. And thanks a lot for joining me tonight.